I do have young couples, they say, oh kita tak ada tempat nak tinggal lah kak, kita kahwin mesti rumah sendiri. Then you definitely cannot wait for your BTO because it's 4-5 years. Tapi untuk adik-adik yang boleh tunggu, I rather you go for BTO. Tapi sekarang bukan saja BTO, dia ada sales of balance flats, dia ada open booking, and these are flats direct from HDB at a heavily subsidized pricing, which I think is amazing because you all baru kerja, tak ada CPF, takkan nak beli private kan, down payment dia besar. Jadi this is a good kickstart for you untuk you consider before you decide what's next.
Hai semua, selamat datang ke The Kaya Raya Podcast, Singapore's first Islamic finance podcast, and because we are the first, we are also the best. Because we're the only one. Nama saya Tasha Khan, saya adalah pelakon, pengacara, an all-round talented person. Dan bersama saya adalah Salihin.
Ya, saya Salihin Samsudin. Saya merupakan seorang pegawai pengurusan dari Resale dan juga Islamic Finance Singapore.
And also all-round talented person.
Dan bagi sesiapa yang baru saja ikuti podcast kami, di podcast Kaya Raya kami sering bincangkan tentang topik-topik kewangan Islam. Dan antara topik-topik yang kita sering bincangkan termasuk persaraan, CPF, perumahan dan sebagainya. Dan pada hari ini kita teruja hati kerana kita mendapat dua orang tetamu, Encik Khalis dan juga Puan Nona. Apa khabar?
Baik, Alhamdulillah.
Okey, bagi pembuka tirai mungkin Encik Khalis dan Puan Nona boleh perkenalkan diri.
Nama saya Ahmad Khalis bin Abdul Ghani, seorang peguam yang mungkin sudah terlalu lama. Jadi dalam praktis saya banyak mengendalikan soal-soal hartanah antaranya, dan sekarang ini lebih banyak menjurus kepada soal-soal korporat, terutama perdagangan antarabangsa. Sekali-sekala masih juga saya ceburkan diri dalam kes-kes yang berkaitan dengan estate ataupun harta peninggalan keluarga Islam.
Ya, dan Puan Nona pula.
Hai, Assalamualaikum. Terima kasih kepada Kaya Raya Podcast sudi invite saya. Saya ni memang dulu asalnya kerja di radio. Pandai cakap. Tapi kalau cakap tentang benda yang saya minat sangat, saya lebih excited. Jadi Alhamdulillah, I have been a property agent, seorang ejen hartanah di Singapura hampir 10 tahun. Dan di bawah pimpinan saya ada lebih kurang 26 anak buah. So I'm running a team, Alhamdulillah. I'm a district division director with ERA. Dan kalau bercakap tentang hartanah, memang I'm very passionate about it. Jadi saya rasa memang sesuai lah untuk saya kongsi pengalaman dan sedikit ilmu untuk pendengar-pendengar podcast you.
Best.
Baik. Kita hari ini ingin bincangkan tentang topik hartanah. Ya, antaranya apabila seseorang tu mau beli hartanah, mungkin ada faktor-faktor yang mereka perlu consider. Mungkin Puan Nona boleh terangkan tak apa faktor-faktor yang mungkin mereka perlu consider apabila membeli hartanah?
Okey, jadi ada beberapa faktor. Di antaranya ialah kemampuan. So, bila kita nak beli rumah, mampu ke tidak untuk kita service the mortgage? Dari segi bulanan bayaran setiap bulan untuk perumahan tu boleh ke tidak? Dan keduanya ialah keperluan. I have a lot of single clients. Mereka rasa sebenarnya tak perlu untuk mereka beli rumah kerana mak bapak masih tumpang. Mereka tak perlu ada rumah sendiri. Tetapi lebih kepada pelaburan. So, dan kita tengok sama ada you nak beli untuk you tinggal sendiri pasal you nak adulting, ataupun you nak beli for capital appreciation for better potential returns. Jadi mereka akan invest in a private property. Bila kita dah duduk dengan clients kita tengok apakah keperluan mereka, baru kita decide lah what to buy. So faktornya ialah kemampuan, your loan eligibility. Second is your needs. What are your needs? Are you buying for your own self, for investment, ataupun to house your family? So these are the things that you look at before you decide lah nak beli HDB ke, nak beli private ke, nak beli BTO ke, resale. You have to meet with someone who can look into your finances before you decide what's best next.
Certain other factors that you need to remember, these are the smaller factors, would be the costs. And they are legal costs, right? Then there's also the stamp duty. If you buy, it's about 3% minus 5,004. If the property that you buy is your second property, then there's additional buyer stamp duties, which is much higher. So we do have to take that into account. This is especially so if you buy for investment, because you buy, then you wish to sell again, say in 5 or 6 years' time. Remember then that when you sell off, well, there is going to be some legal costs again. There is no tax on appreciation of your assets. But if you're thinking of selling and then buying another property, then when you buy the other property, you have to pay stamp duty again. So do bear in mind these so-called hidden costs. Secondly, if you buy to steal or even to invest, there's a good chance that the property that you buy may not be in top shape. And you buy with a view to renovate so that it appreciates in value. Renovation cost can be big. And sometimes if you do not plan properly, you'll find that your renovation cost is much more than what you planned for. And then the appreciation will not be as much as you wish, Worse, if you're staying there, you'll be staying in a home in which you do not feel so comfortable. So a lot of details need to be looked at very properly. Sit patiently with your agent and discuss all these things. You'll get the right advice. My advice always to buyers is do not rush.
Mungkin the foremost question yang golongan saya fresh grad lah, baru keluar universiti. The foremost question yang kita selalu tanyakan diri kita, can I afford a HDB flat? And how much should I earn to start thinking about owning a HDB? So what's your advice, Puan Nona?
Saya rasa pemerintah ni memang murah hati. Kerana apa? Untuk orang yang baru sahaja bekerja, CPF tak banyak, sebenarnya pemerintah beri banyak geran, boleh sehingga 150,000 dan boleh digunakan sebagai down payment untuk rumah HDB tersebut untuk resale lah. Kalau BTO jangan cakap, BTO tu memang you beli harga dia dah disubsidize, memang sudah murah. Jadi banyak sekali skim-skim pemerintah yang boleh membantu anda dalam proses pemilikan perumahan di Singapura. Contoh, saya ada satu pasangan suami isteri baru berkahwin. Bila saya tanya kerja apa? Kak, kita jual sate je lah kat Hawker Center. Kita tak ada duit CPF tau. Dalam hati, macam mana mereka nak beli rumah? Tapi they submit their notice of assessment because for self-employed, you kena ada 2 years of your NOA to apply for a loan. Tapi apa yang I think is wonderful about that case was the government grants given by HDB was enough to cover their down payment dan mereka boleh beli rumah 4 bilik dekat Bedok, rumah lama dekat dengan mak dan bulanannya mampu bayar because they don't have CPF contribution, they pay in cash. So I think for a young couple, if you cannot wait, I would say resale. Pasal resale ni dalam 3 hingga 6 bulan anda dapat rumah. Kalau untuk yang boleh tunggu, masih boleh tumpang rumah mak, please go and buy your BTO flats because apa? Kebanyakan you nampak orang beli BTO ni, mereka kena tunggu 5 tahun. Kemudian dah dapat kunci, kena duduk lagi 5 tahun. So all in all, dalam 10 tahun proses anda sebelum anda decide whether nak jual, nak beli rumah besar ke, nak beli private ke. But I tell you that BTO flat is going to make you some money to kickstart your asset progression. Jadi anda tengok mana satu yang lebih sesuai untuk keperluan anda. Kalau anda berpasangan, if it were me, kalau ada masa, I would definitely go for a BTO flat lah. Tapi kalau tidak, the resale grants is very good for you to kickstart your asset progression journey.
Okay, kalau saya pula, saya bukan fresh grad. Saya memang freelancer. Saya tak berpasangan. Kalau saya pula nak prepare untuk beli rumah tu macam mana?
Okay, so again, in your instance, it's more for house ownership because it's always nice to have a house under your own name for investment purposes because you don't know what your plans are. So for most freelancers, like I said, you kena declare your NOA. Whatever income you dapat, notice of assessment mesti Grab driver ke, Gojek ke, mesti submit notice of assessment because ini akan determine kelayakan hutang. Berapa hutang HDB atau bank boleh kasih you. Then for singles pun banyak grant. Tinggal dekat dengan mak dapat RM10,000. Lepas tu ada first timers grant juga RM40,000. So all these grants you can actually use to down pay and then be eligible for that loan of 80%. Yeah, so I memang galakkan lah daripada duduk rumah mak, lebih baik beli rumah sendiri kan. At least boleh sewakan bilik, boleh dapat passive income.
Oh, okay. So ada difference lah when you nak decide whether to go for a BTO ataupun resale. So in this case, you were saying kalau kita boleh tunggu, we go for BTO instead. And kalau kita dah mampu, we go for resale. Is that what you were saying?
Again, keperluan kehidupan. Like I said, I do have young couples, they say, oh kita tak ada tempat nak tinggal lah kak, kita kahwin mesti rumah sendiri. Then you definitely cannot wait for your BTO because it's 4-5 years. Then you go for resale. Tapi untuk adik-adik yang boleh tunggu, I rather you go for BTO. Tapi sekarang bukan saja BTO. Dia ada sales of balance flats. Dia ada open booking. And these are flats direct from HDB at a heavily subsidized pricing. Which I think is amazing because you all baru kerja, tak ada CPF, takkan nak beli private kan? Down payment dia besar. Jadi this is a good kickstart for you untuk you consider before you decide what's next.
And then untuk orang macam saya, you was recommending resale ke, BTO ke?
Okay, for single clients, you tak boleh beli BTO 3 room and above. Anda hanya boleh beli 2-room BTO flat sahaja. So some people like it, some people don't. So for my younger clients who are more affluent, they have good income, kak, I think I nak beli 4-room resale lah. I had one teacher, she actually bought an executive and she's single. Then I'm like, you sorang-sorang kenapa you nak rumah besar? Oh, I banyak kucing, I want more space. So my relatives datang, they can just hang around. So again,
that's nice.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you're single, you can't own an executive flat. Again, it depends on your loan eligibility lah. So that's what we did for her. She did move into an EA and she's alone.
So this brings us back a point made earlier by Nona, which is to answer the question, why would you want to buy the flat? Is it to stay in or is it for investment? Yeah, so if it's for investment, a lot of focus is on how much income can you get from the property. You see, whereas if you want to stay there, then a lot of other considerations come in, like, is it comfortable? Is it near my parents' house? And so even if it doesn't bring too much income, doesn't matter. I want to be comfortable there. So having that clear mind becomes important. That makes your decision making much easier.
I ada single client, dia kata, mak I tinggal seorang, I selesa duduk dengan mak. Tapi duit CPF sayang, I tak ke mana duit CPF I. I've got some savings, I nak beli investment. What would you recommend, Nona? We actually bought her one bedder condo. At that point was only 650,000 dekat Pasir Ris, and we rented it out. Her mortgage was 1750. We rented it out for 2005. So technically every month dia ada surplus. Because dia dah bayar the bank loan, she had a bit of surplus, and she was very happy for the next 3 years because eventually the property appreciated in capital, and then when we sold it at the 3rd year mark, we actually made some money for her. So dia dah collect rental tu ada net, and after that the price at that point went up as well. She sold it off, and now just she's sitting and, okay, what do I buy next?
Oh wow. And if you can just elaborate on the location.
Pasir Ris, depan Pasir Ris MRT, one of the condo there.
Don't give the unit
Tak
number.
boleh. But we actually bought the one bedder for 650 at that point. She sold it at about 850. 3 years timeline aja.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, you were saying?
No, as in I was just saying dapat MRT.
Oh.
Convenient.
Okay.
Yeah.
Therefore, for masyarakat Melayu Islam kita, kita selalu dapat soalan-soalan lah tentang pinjaman bank. Whether pinjaman bank tu halal ke tidak, and how are they going to navigate in terms of financing dia tu lah.
Well, important but difficult question to answer, because the situation in Singapore is such that at this moment at least, there is no syariah compliant housing loan. At this moment, there have been attempts, there have been efforts, but it has not come to light as yet. There are a number of challenges that we have. Banks generally are more familiar with the conventional financing transactions, so not so willing to try Islamic finance. But there may be other reasons. Like, for instance, see, in order for an Islamic finance transaction or process to be put in place, a number of factors have to be there. Number one, the process have to be laid out from beginning to end, from meeting the client to getting the documents done, to executing the documents, to enforcement, and to enforcing. So I give an example. So if you have the Sharia compliant financing product where interest is taken out, the bank must have a process where they still make money but without interest. So the process will be different. The documents to be executed will be different, and there might be more documents than what you have in a normal lending transaction. And then how does the bank accommodate the costing for this extra documentation? And then what about enforcement? In the case of a normal conventional loan, if a borrower is late in repayment, then the bank's recourse is to claim for principal plus interest. But in the case of a Sharia compliant one, you cannot claim for interest. You claim for loss. So there's a different way of calculating. But most banks don't have this way of calculating. It's not in place yet. So the system has to be in place. Secondly, don't mind if I take a bit of time on this. Secondly, there must be manpower who knows what to do, who knows what to say, because if you're saying that, Sharia compliant financing is just the same as loan, except that we take profit instead of interest, that's a bad way of explaining it. You have to explain why it's Sharia compliant as opposed to one that takes in interest and therefore not Sharia compliant. The third element is that the costing, which is related to scale. See, if you have this process and you have the people, but the bank only has 2 applicants per month, it's not doable. So there must be a market there. Now you can already see this is a chicken and egg situation, right? Because in order to have a market, you must have the product. But in order to have the product, you must have a market. So how do we solve this issue? So the short answer to that question is, it's not an easy challenge, but all these factors will have to be looked at and, shall I say, resolved almost at the same time. It's a whole of industry kind of effort. Then you can have something done. So examples will be in Malaysia, UK. You have whole of society, systems that enable Sharia compliant financing to take place. In Singapore, not yet. Let's hope it comes one day.
Right. Do you think this is a prevalent issue in Singapore now? People demanding for Sharia compliant punya loans?
My sense is that more and more are asking for it. So the current opinion is that if it's not there, then, there's nothing much you can do about it. Just like our CPF monies. At one point, there is a question as to whether we can take the profit or the interest from CPF. And there was some opinions given that the income derived from CPF is not interest which is haram because it's derived for investments. But the fact that it is guaranteed can raise some issue. So it's a live issue. Our asatizas and even I think the fatwa committee is constantly and actively looking at this. Then if the community then creates enough demand and has enough manpower and is able to assist the banks in its process setting up, then I think there will be a time when you can have Sharia compliant financing products provided by the banks. Then if it's there, then it's no longer an excuse for us not to do Sharia financing.
How about in your practice, Puan Nona? Do you see clients demanding such Sharia compliant loan ataupun tak sangat?
Okay, first I nak disclaimer, I bukan ustazah. I share what I know. Tapi dalam konteks kehidupan sekarang, di mana perumahan ni merupakan sesuatu yang menjadi keperluan untuk kebanyakan rakyat Singapura. Jadi bila benda tu perlu dan tidak ada, kata orang ni, option of that Sharia compliant punya bank loans for now, kita harus ambil kerana not many of us have $500,000 cash in our bank accounts to fully pay a house. So kita perlu ambil hutang untuk sara hidup kita, jadi kita ada rumah. So dari segi konteks, kita perlu perumahan. It's impossible for all of us to fully pay a flat. But again, I have many types of clients. Ada yang question, dia kata, oh but tak perlu apa you ambil hutang untuk beli rumah besar. Pasal berdosa kan ambil hutang ni. It's haram, right? Again, I say look back. You know, kalau you rasa in your family context, there is a need because you have 6-7 children, how to squeeze everybody in a 3-room flat? It won't be conducive. Jadi kalau dengan ambil hutang sedikit demi menampung keluarga yang besar and hoping for better capital appreciation in future because you're upgrading to a bigger property, I rasa perlu untuk anda lakukan sedemikian. Tapi again, macam Encik Ahmad Khalis kata awal tadi, di Singapura ni memang tak ada Sharia compliant loan supply and demand because technically tak ramai. Kita ni minority. Kita bukan tinggal di negeri yang majoritinya Islam. Jadi bila kita minority, kita perlu gunakan apa yang sudah disediakan oleh pemerintah. So halal or haram is very difficult for me to say. Depends on your family's needs. I have families who go like, no, I want to fully pay to fully pay. And we will do that as well. Macam kalau kita beli rumah ni dah habis bayar, kita akan pindah ke rumah seterusnya juga habis bayar. Kerana mereka tak percaya tentang hutang. Tapi ada juga family yang progresif. Pada mereka, yes, you're right Nona, I need to upgrade because why? Nanti bila I upgrade, bila anak-anak I dah keluar, bila I downsize, I dapat cash surplus. Surplus tu untuk persaraan I. And then it becomes a need. So at that point, there is a need for them to upgrade because you're working towards a healthier retirement through your assets. Yeah. So halal ke haram? I tak boleh jawab pasal I bukan ustazah.
Sorry, then I pula nak tambah because in terms of Sharia compliance, this is just a curiosity for me. You cakap pasal kemampuan. Jadi kalau let's say we talk about yang orang yang beli kondo tu, actually kalau dia tak ada rental tu, dia tak mampu kan nak bayar tu mortgage. So is it salah tak yang kita gunakan rental untuk bayar mortgage? Because technically saya tak ada duit untuk bayar ni mortgage. So kalau saya tak ada saya gunakan rental ni and I'm using the renter's inability to buy a house and my ability to buy a house to make money off somebody.
Okay, in my case, for my clients who actually proceed with a private property, kita kena cakap tentang sustainability. Pertama, mereka kena mampu. Kalau dia tak mampu, saya takkan kasih dia beli kondo tu. Kerana apa? Bayangkan kalau you tak ada tenant. Because nak cari tenant pun makan masa. Walaupun you dah beli rumah tu, tapi kita nak kena market, nak kena cari tenant. Habis siapa nak bayar bank? So again, kalau anda rasa anda nak beli private, first, kena sustainable purchase. Bermaksud, you have CPF monies ataupun you ada cash, you boleh bayar bulanan. Kalau tak ada tenant 6 bulan, 1 tahun, you masih boleh bayar rumah tu. Then we talk about passive income. Because why? Macam you cakap halal ke haram ke tidak Again, it's your own needs. Pasal dia memang mampu bayar rumah tu. Kalau dia bayar gunakan the rental from the tenant to pay the mortgage, to me it's not wrong. Because why? She's single, dia tak ada anak. You bayangkan kalau apa-apa jadi pada dia, kalau dia jatuh sakit, siapa nak tanggung dia? Dengan the sale of the property, ada cash, dia boleh sara hidup dia sendiri, tak perlu mak bapak dia tolong dia. So we are looking in that perspective where it doesn't seem like a need for now, but if you look at it long term, this house that you purchase might be of good use to you in the future if you need something that will give you that asset, that cash out. Yeah, so that's what we did for this lady lah.
Maybe just add a bit also. In terms of Islamic law, there's nothing wrong with collecting rent. The only thing objectionable about the whole transaction is that you take a bank loan because you have to pay interest. So that's the main problem. And there's an additional problem, which is that if you use your CPF requires, that when you return the CPF back after you sell off the property, you must return the CPF principal plus interest. So there's an interest component there. So that spoils the whole thing. And this, in fact, is another reason why many banks are quite reluctant to have or to think of a Sharia-compliant financing product, because most Singaporeans, if not all, would use their CPF. And once you use CPF, there is some interest component which you have to resolved. And because of that interest component there, you cannot make the whole transaction Sharia compliant. So you cannot run away from the interest component in the Singapore aspect. And as mentioned by my colleague just now, because of that, it's almost like a darurat situation, There's no option for you unless the system changes. But just to come back to your point, let's be clear as to which part is it that is non-Sharia compliant and which is not. It's not that the whole transaction is wrong. It's certain components which are non-compliant, and that creates issues. So if you can do away with that, then you don't have a problem.
Okay, and this is on the side of the law, but my question was more on like morality and like, is this right? Is this wrong? And
It's fine. Honestly, if you ask me, it's fine.
If you look at our community sekarang kan, based on your experience, ada tak mungkin misconception yang mungkin that exists within our community when they are trying to own a property?
like a common misconception.
Yeah, common misconception, yeah.
For me, one of the main common misconception is jangan ambil hutang bank, nanti bank tarik rumah kau. Pernah dengar tak? Kau kalau nak beli rumah, kau jangan ambil hutang bank, nanti kalau kau tak bayar bank tarik. Honestly, I've never taken a HDB loan all my life because at that point, I rasa the interest rate is much lower with the banks than HDB. So walaupun I beli rumah, my first matrimonial home, it was actually under HDB, a bank loan. Yeah, because at that point, the bank offered much lesser interest rate because I wanted to save a bit on interest. So that's one of the misconception. I suka hutang bank. I suka hutang bank. Pasal apa? You're leveraging on something that will give you better potential returns in the long term. So again, bila you beli a property, you must understand what is your objective. Short term ataupun long term. Kalau you tahu, you beli for example, a client, she bought her first matrimonial home, a resale flat in Serangoon for 16 years of their married life. And then when I wanted to sell it off, they're in their late 40s, nak beli private, negative 60,000. Macam mana boleh sampai negative 60,000? Because why? Bila kita beli rumah, kita bayar gunakan duit CPF, macam Encik Ahmad Khalis mentioned earlier, there is this CPF accrued interest portion whereby you need to return with the interest that you're supposed to earn kalau duit tu duduk diam-diam kat ordinary account. Pasal pemerintah patut hadiahkan kat you 2.5% interest. Tapi pasal you dah gunakan dalam rumah you, pemerintah kata bila kau jual, kau kena pulangkan balik dengan bunga yang sepatutnya kau raih. So you're supposed to return the interest that you are supposed to earn. Okay, it's a bit complicated kan? So what happened with this couple? Dah bayar, it was a negative 60,000. Meaning, they were supposed to earn the 60,000 from the CPF accrued interest. But at that point, because the market HDB was not so good, we sold it slightly lesser and they lost that 60,000 that they are supposed to earn. So macam mana? They still want to make money from their properties. Pasal dah 16 tahun kahwin, duit rumah tu tak untung. We moved them up to a landed property. It's a 99-year lease punya property in Serangoon as well. We entered at 1.85 mil at that point. Now, about 5 years, dia punya value dah appreciate about 2.8 close to 3 million. You bayangkan, dalam a span of less than 5 years, more than 1 million over profit tau. Kalau dia tak leverage on that bank loan, because she definitely don't have 1.85 million in her bank to fully pay that landed, but we are leveraging using a bank loan untuk beli sesuatu yang boleh kasih lebih pulangan bila dia perlu nanti. So now they're enjoying that landed property, they like the space, they got children, mak dia pun dah tinggal bersama dengan dia. Dan kita review, Nona macam mana rumah ni nak jual ke? Kakak nak patah balik HDB ke? Macam mana Nona? Cakap, you're enjoying the house, right? The price is still going up. I don't think there's a need for you to sell and downsize for now. So she's still there. Sebab tu saya cakap, kalau you dapat tengok bank loan ni sebagai sesuatu yang positif, dia boleh membantu mengembangkan harta anda. Kerana kita kan kalau boleh nak preach orang Melayu Islam kena kaya. Kalau kita kaya, kita boleh bantu orang. Macam nama podcast ni, Kaya Raya kan. Kita semua nak kaya raya. Amin. Amin kan. Kenapa? Dengan kekayaan itu, kita boleh membantu masyarakat. Because banyak ruang untuk kita, pemerintah disediakan untuk kita membantu. So, like I said, I love bank loans. Tapi kalau tak boleh bank loan, ada yang takut, go for HDB loan. So, misconception tentang bank loan. Satu lagi, misconception. Kau jangan pindah kondo tau, menunjuk. Pernah dengar tak? Kau jangan beli private, menunjuk. Nanti action, orang kata kau show off beli kondo. Again, when someone embarks on asset progression, you kena faham sama ada dia nak menunjuk ataupun dia ada long-term plans. Because macam I cakap, the move now might not seem like a necessity. It might seem like a lavish lifestyle upgrade. But at that point, bila you rasa macam, okay, I think I need help. I got retrenched ataupun I tak boleh sustain the mortgage. That property that you stay, if you ask me, will definitely give better returns than staying in a HDB. Because you kena faham, HDB ni perumahan awam. It has to be sustainable. Government tak boleh make you earn so much money out of your HDB because it's public housing. Untuk masyarakat, it has to be sustainable and affordable. Tapi kalau anda move out from that circle into a private property, the private property, kalau you tengok the property price index, memang exciting. Because why? The capital depreciation there is definitely more. Sebab tu I cakap, bukan pasal menunjuk, tetapi lebih kepada perancangan untuk hari tua. Dalam Singaporean konteks, perumahan dengan persaraan ni berkait rapat. I can give you a lot of examples. I tell you, I kerja real estate ni macam, what is God trying to tell me? I nampak pakcik-pakcik yang tinggal rumah 4 bilik tak ada duit. Dulu cikgu. Cikgu dulu kerja kira macam standard tau. Live in a foreign flat, the value of the property is about 280,000. Pakcik ada rumah tak ada duit. So bila dia nak jual, nak pindah apa cik? 4 bilik pindah 3 bilik. Rumah 3 bilik dah 250 at that point. So dah 30,000 je. Dah bayar agent 10,000, renovate dapur 10,000, pakcik ada 10,000. Apa ada? Tapi pakcik tu cute, dia kata, dulu rumah pakcik 500,000. Kenapa tak jual at that point? Pasal at that point dia tak ada keperluan untuk jual rumah dia. Berbanding dengan one of my clients, bila I pergi, pakcik ni tinggal kondo 75-year-old retiree teacher as well. Tinggal kondo 2 bedder, freehold property. So I keep on tanya, cik kerja apa ingat businessman? Tak, cik dulu cikgu je. Oh, before you tinggal kondo ni, you tinggal apa? I tinggal landed, I beli in my 40s. Oh, you bought a landed in your 40s? Tu pun takut-takut lah. Tapi kita try je lah. So when I sold out my landed, pindah rumah kecil sikit, I beli this 2-bedder freehold condo. Tapi sekarang dah tinggal 2 orang, I pun dah tak sihat. Jual je lah. I sold that property at that point was at about 1.7 mil. And this pakcik at 75 years old is 1.7 mil cash rich. Masya Allah. So that's why, like I said, your property decision when you're younger will somehow determine what kind of retirement you will have. But well, some people are happy with 250,000. I'm not saying that's wrong. Again, you ask yourself, bila you retire, berapa you nak bulan-bulan?
So what was your strategy for yang pakcik yang downgrade to 3-bedder?
So what happened to him was, I told him ada 2 pilihan. Satu, pakcik tu boleh lease buyback. Lease buyback is a scheme by the government whereby you can stay in the house, pulangkan the remaining lease to HDB, so they'll value your house and pay you accordingly. Top up your full retirement account. The pakcik will get a lump sum payment and monthly repayment from his CPF life. That's one, okay? Tapi dia dah tak ada hak milik rumah, which means he doesn't own the property anymore. Anything happens to him, go back to HDB. Okay? So that's lease buyback. The second one, I told the pakcik, downsize to a flexi lah, rumah studio 1 bilik 1 hall. Alamak kecil lah, cucu-cucu kalau nak datang tak cukup tempat. He didn't like the idea. The third one is to rent it out, stay with the children and get passive income. Tak selesa lah tinggal dengan anak. That pakcik is still there.
So he did the lease buyback lah.
He's still there. He hasn't decided what he wants to do with the property.
I suppose the lesson learned here is planning is very important. Because if it's too late, and then your options are much more limited.
And again, what do you think, yang misconception? Yeah.
One, I suppose, is that it's not really misperception, but an expectation that interest rates will remain the same, and a person's job is always stable. So while we cannot be so careful as to then not even buy any house at all, but do have some buffer, to cater for things like hikes in interest rate where you pay higher and or out of job for a few months, have enough to be able to cater for your housing expenses. So, I mean, not saying anything, but let's say some months ago, when there was an increase in interest rates, some of us were just wondering, what's the big problem? I mean, but then I realized that many who, in local parlance, say the expenses is just ngam. That's dangerous. Okay? That's dangerous. So it's more financial planning than property purchase that you should have buffer so that to cater for for contingencies like this. Then the other misperception, totally agree with Nona in that we have this sort of aversion towards wealth accumulation.
Kenapa orang Melayu takut kaya?
Itu dia, which should not be. Because, well, that's how we got our madrasahs and our mosques today. Because our forefathers were brave enough to buy land at Aljunied Road, the whole of Aljunied Road and all the surroundings were owned by the Aljunied family, for instance. That's why it's called Aljunied Road, right? And the Alsagoff families, Alka families and all that. Okay, they've gone. We should do the same, you see. Okay, I for one definitely, not sure about Nona, but I do not have enough money to even buy 2 houses. But if I am able today, right, to accumulate a bit more wealth than my father did, and then pass it on to my kids, hopefully my kids will have more wealth than I do. In a few generations, I think they would have enough resources to do the kind of things that I mentioned just now. So let's look long term, let's think big, but no need for us to rush into it. But let's have that, how shall I say, let's get rid of this fear, to commit to buy assets, real property especially, and expand wealth. If I can just give a very simple example, the fact that our forefathers very long ago was able to sustain a community of migrants was partly because someone in Medina said, this is my land, you can build a mosque there. Or this is my land, there's a well there, you can drink water from there. But you can't do that if you don't have real estate.
Oh, Nona, do you think ada masyarakat Melayu Islam kita was-was kalau nak buat accumulate wealth?
Oh, I think there's a shift in mindset. Kebanyakan orang muda Singapura, saya dalam 40 tahun kan, jadi kira muda lah kan. Saya rasa there is an awareness. Perlu untuk kita buat perancangan yang baik untuk perumahan kita demi persaraan yang lebih selesa. So you see a lot of public education, forum, seminar untuk educate the community on how to do investment. One of the investment tools is through property. Because property, if you ask most Singaporeans, that is their biggest assets in their life. And if you are able to plan properly and enter a property that will give you potential returns in future, that will be amazing. Because when we talk about wealth accumulation, the last wakaf property in Singapore was in 1976. Sejak tahun tu, dah tak ada lagi orang Islam kaya kat Singapura ni yang akan wakafkan harta dia untuk masyarakat. Jadi, I rasa penting untuk kembalikan semangat untuk give back to the community for wakaf. So, that's why you need to build your wealth and your assets so that you're able to just give for your akhirah. Because why are we on this earth? At the end of the day, every one of us wants to go to Jannah. But how do you get there? There are many ways and tools for us to get there. So, kalau kita semua jadi orang Islam yang kaya, boleh membantu masyarakat, boleh bina atau memberi balik kepada wakaf, I think this is amazing lah.
Encik, recently saya baru nampak ada success stories. Ada budak Cina ni baru graduate, dah own multiple properties. Do you have similar success stories dalam kaum Melayu Islam kita?
I rasa sekarang a little bit difficult pasal pemerintah dia bukan nak cakap tak nak galakkan, tapi macam tadi Encik Ahmad Khalis kata, the additional buyer stamp duty. Before this, it was very easy. You can just take a 90% loan, 10% down payment and you can have multiple properties. But the government realised that it's not good because why? People are over leveraging. Dia dah lah tak mampu tapi dia banyak property. So there was a market burst of the bubble, But when they stepped in and introduced all these cooling measures to ensure that you are able to be eligible for a loan, you're able to sustain, and we give you this heavy tax of 20% additional buyer stamp duty. On top of the buyer stamp duty, you mampu, baru I kasih you beli your second third properties. So untuk cakap nak berandakkan property sekarang in this current context, I think it's going to be a little bit difficult, but I do have clients that I managed to get at least 2 properties. Satu untuk tinggal, satu untuk passive income. 2 I think is quite the norm, tapi kalau multiple properties, unless bapak you banyak duit, you billionaire, I rasa 20% ABS is not worth. Yeah, because you won't see the capital appreciation later on pasal you dah banyak sangat spend. These are the hidden costs orang tak nampak. Your ABSD, and then after that your renovation cost. You can't beat the profit that you're going to get if you're going to sell it off in 3 to 5 years time.
Do you think housing market ada berubah before COVID and after COVID? In the recent years, do you think that the housing market ada shift?
Yeah, I have to say that I'm very thankful to the government in a sense that government kita ni, dia pandai jaga masyarakat in a sense that there will never be a property bubble burst. It's really well managed in Singapore, I think. Of course, prices keeps going up. Sometimes I blame property agents as well because kita jual 100k COV. So all the sellers are asking 100k COV. Pasal dia nak cakap dia bagus kan, dia jual rumah pakai ada COV kan. So cakap you shoot yourself in your own foot sometimes, The prices are crazily expensive now. I won't think that there's going to be a bubble burst. I think there's going to be a market correction. Yeah, that means it's going to go through probably a plateau and a slight dip so that everything settles down and people's expectations are better managed. So macam sekarang kalau orang jual rumah, diorang mesti nak COV. Jadi kita perlu educate in this current market. Kalau kita dapat jual pada harga nilai at value, actually is good enough already.
My own observation, just specifically on COVID, is that I do not see a big change in market trends. Except that we see some changes in taste. Meaning buyers now will ask questions like, is the network here good? Is there space for me to work at home? And not only will I work at home, my children may have to do home-based learning. So is there space for them as well? So these are some of the issues which arise now, which didn't arise before. So looking ahead as to what needs to be done in the case of another epidemic, kind of questions have come up a bit. Not much, but it's there.
I mean, the world has changed also kan. Since like COVID, even if it doesn't happen again, like another epidemic, memang dah ada banyak perubahan based on that. Like now people have remote work and now people demand remote work. So they want to make space for it at home. So it makes sense. I want to ask a question. Sorry, tadi you were saying that like one of the misconceptions is about interest. That interest stays the same. Tapi kalau saya dah ambil bank loan untuk beli rumah, for example, the interest won't change kan. Like it can't be like, okay, I took this bank loan for like with how many percent interest, but they won't like during the course of the loan.
No, okay. Bank loans is not like HDB loan. HDB loan is a flat rate, 2.6% for 25 years tenure. Tapi for banks, because of course banks want to make money lah kan, you can go on a floating rate or you can go on a fixed rate. Fixed rate ni pun macam first 2 years it'll be at X amount. Let's say for now it's about maybe 2.7 for the first 2 years. The third, fourth, fifth year it will float. So it's up to the owner whether they want to reprice or refinance the bank or jump banks to see which rate is better. Some people in the community find it leceh. Macam leceh lah nak kena cari bank, cik punya rate dah naik 4%. So you need that constant effort of always repricing or refinancing in order for you to secure better interest rate. Tapi kalau HDB loan dia memang flat. Personally for me, dah 3-4 kali tukar bank loan. Because why? You always want to find something that gives you better rates. Yeah, so that's the difference between HDB loan dan juga bank loan.
And that's what you were saying. That's why ada orang macam dia ngam-ngam sekali interest naik tu macam I have no more money to. Okay. Probably I'm here macam actually the main thing is that you have to kena beranikan diri lah. Macam saya dengar like berapa kali you refinance, tukar loan sini sana. Macam takut dah dengar. Tapi nak kena berani lah. Nak kena ada tu faith that it will be okay, that kind of thing. Kena redha.
Bank rate dah naik 5% redha. Tak boleh redha, you must make changes to it. Yeah. Again, macam tadi Encik Khalis said that proper financial planning is important. I think banyak orang enticed by this, you boleh beli condo tak payah cash, you can use all of CPF to pay. But the problem with that is they wipe out all your CPF, there's no buffer. So that's the danger in that. When the interest rates go up, these people panic because suddenly nak kena keluar cash from your active income. So if you meet a good property agent, mashallah, you need to plan for 7 to 10 years to be able to sustain that property before you decide to sell it off. So kalau private kan you need to stay for 3 years. If not, there's seller's stamp duty tax. But some agents, diorang beli pasal you suka then bye-bye. There's no proper financial planning involved in times of emergency. Kalau mati, okay, settle lah, insurance, HPS boleh settle. Tapi kalau kena cancer, kalau sakit, that's where you need to have private insurance. So there'll be a payout to manage the mortgage. So I come with a financial planning background. I'm just blessed because my husband is a financial planner. Jadi I have that knowledge. I bukan saja jual beli rumah. I fikir kalau dia kena cancel macam mana. Rumah tu siapa nak bayar? Because when you have all these contingency plans, it's easier for you to embark on that property with an ease of mind. Yeah, pasal you jangan ikut trend. Because I've taken over cases lah. Kondo-kondo yang diorang masuk show flat. Itulah, diorang suruh kita beli. Kita nampak macam okay at that point. Okay lah, gaji okay. Dia beli, suami kena retrench. Lepas tu, agent yang they work with wipe out all the CPF. There was no savings. So we had to scramble lah to quickly sell off the flat, the condo just to move back to a HDB. So I don't want people to get into that trap, of an upgrade. Lepas tu mereka tak mampu. So penting untuk buat perancangan keuangan yang baik. Jadi you boleh sustain that property for, like I said, at least 7 to 10 years.
One trend that I observe, I'm not saying this just to praise Nona and her husband, but I see that the quality of real estate agents have increased tremendously over the years, especially among the Malay Muslim ones. Buying property is not just a standalone transaction, as mentioned just now. It's actually part of your financial planning. Because without proper financial planning, then your calculations for buying the property may go haywire, which is the cause of your concern. But if, when you want to buy a property, you calculate your income, your expenses and everything else, then you can see that a very good chance that you'll be able to pay, and should there be any problems, you'll still be able to survive for another 5-6 months. Worst come to the worst, you sell and get back some money. That's financial planning, including insurance, medical, life, and so on and so forth. So I see as real estate agents nowadays, they come with that full package. Not just, you buy this price and you sell at this price, you use this CPF, you take this loan. Not just that. They look at the financial background of the person buying, needs and requirements, plus planning, what is he looking at, what does he want in future, and so on. Then when we look at it that way, then we do understand that when we look at investments in real estate or property, it has to be looked at in the context of overall financial planning, which I think most agents nowadays are quite capable of doing.
Do you think that quality of real estate agent is across the board ataupun only those outstanding punya?
No, I think it's more or less across the board from what I see. Of course, we have to look at each one. But my own observation is that from the transactions that I've known of personally, the agents have come up with solid planning advice for their clients. There are, of course, those who push in one direction, may not be so helpful to the client. But many are very professional and objective and quite willing to say, this one I think is a bit beyond you, don't buy. And we've seen that happening. So, but more importantly, they do not see buying a property as a standalone transaction. It's part of
It's part of a bigger picture.
Well, Nona, what are your thoughts? I mean, you've grown into a big team right now. So is there any philosophy that you impart to your team members?
I usually recommend my associates to guide their clients to stretch but don't overstretch. Because when you're slightly younger, you have tenure, you have loan eligibility, it's important to actually maximize your potential. Ada orang dia nak tapi dia takut. Pasal I memang besar orang susah rumah 3 bilik seumur hidup. Jadi bila I berkahwin, I beli rumah maisonette, pada I tu dah macam syurga, dah Masya Allah, ada tangga dalam rumah. Because I grew up in a 3-room flat all my life. But when I entered real estate, I nampak orang yang simple, tapi pasal their decision in property assisted them to change their life, I got inspired. So that's where I macam, boleh ke? Mampu ke kita untuk upgrade dan beli rumah lebih besar atau a private property? But when I look into our finances, nampak mampu, boleh sustain. That's where the gut comes in. Whether you're high risk or low risk, you just go, I know the mortgage is sustainable. This property will give me better returns in future. I did it. Alhamdulillah lah. Tak nak share lah berapa property ada kan. Tapi cukup lah, anak I ramai. Anak boleh kongsi anak 5. But because of all that little decisions I made, led me to where I am today, I share my policies in life and real estate investing with my associates. So that, diorang pun I galakkan, kalau boleh jual your HDB, cash out from your BTO, move into a private property and make the asset grow because it's for longer term. Nanti bila anak anda dah keluar, dah kahwin, rumah tu you downsize, pindah rumah kecil sikit, your surplus cash will definitely be more than you staying in a HDB flat all your life. Again, needs, kalau ada keperluan, silakan untuk upgrade. Kalau tidak ada keperluan, 2 orang, they say tak apalah Nona, this 3-room flat pun kita okay 2 orang. It's not a wrong decision. You need to understand apakah keinginan you as an investor. Because property is also investment, kan? Jadi kalau you low risk ke high risk, you tanya diri you, okay ke tidak, mampu ke tidak. Tak naklah you beli private, lepas tu kena bayar 5,000 satu bulan, lepas tu menggeletar je tangan bulan-bulan. Tak nak. It has to be a sustainable purchase.
But do you think, because there's recently ada this trend, they think that property prices dah naik semua, they are starting to shift their perception to Malaysia, Johor Bahru. They are starting to buy properties there in Johor Bahru. Do you think that's a good decision?
My analogy is I don't own overseas properties because personally for me, I still believe in the Singapore property landscape because why? Our government is very stable, our currency is very strong. People from China, Indonesia, Malaysia, all investing here. Jadi kalau kita sebagai rakyat tak nak invest dalam tanah you sendiri, kenapa you nak sibuk-sibuk invest kat luar negeri? I have so many people who had tried investing in Malaysia and because of the currency risk, dah tak ada nilai dan because diorang boleh jual pada foreigner saja. Bumi Putra tak boleh beli rumah dia. Benda tu stuck, dah tak boleh buat apa pun. Jadi, I rasa orang yang beli ke sana, mungkin matlamat mereka adalah mereka nak bersara di Malaysia. Then I say, go ahead, please buy. If your intention is for retirement, you want to stay in that property, silakan. Tapi for investment purposes, hoping that property will make money, to me personally, I don't believe in it lah. Because there is currency risk.
In fact, currency risk is definitely one. There are lots of risks. So you need to know what these risks are. Nona mentioned quite a few. You have the market risk because and different markets act differently. And sometimes within that market, each area acts differently. So in Johor, for instance, certain areas appreciated in value and certain areas do not. Or certain areas appreciate in value much more than certain other areas. So the disparity is something that we need to understand. Secondly, the rules and laws are different. So the market may not be as straightforward as you understand it in Singapore. There may be restrictions as to whom you can sell, when you can sell, and so on. So I've seen horror transactions where even after the property is sold, the proceeds of sale, after 2 years, the seller still has not gotten it. And it's still stuck somewhere, quite difficult to explain where the money is and when you're going to get it back. And this is real. But to them, that's normal, So rules and regulations can be different, market can be different, there is currency risk. So if you wish to put some money there because you have extra money nonetheless is still money, please do your studies carefully and get, sufficient advice before jumping in.
Untuk komuniti Melayu Islam kita, ada tak skim bantuan kewangan yang pemerintah ada sediakan?
Like especially untuk orang...
Especially untuk komuniti Melayu Islam.
Not specially. It's for everyone. Still, I think there's enough to go around and there's still a lot out there who has not benefited or taken advantage of these grants. So let's just just take those first.
Yeah, for the community in specific tak ada. Tapi macam I cakap, kalau you nak beli resale, the grants can go up to even 200,000 berdasarkan tangga gaji. Untuk mereka yang tinggal di rumah sewa, ada diorang pernah jual rumah and because of life circumstances, diorang kena pindah rumah sewa. There's this fresh start housing scheme untuk those in rental flat. There's another additional grants that the government can give. So I think banyak skim-skim pemerintah yang boleh membantu dalam pemilikan hartanah di Singapura. Kita perlu ambil tahu sahaja dan perlu ingin ambil tahu.
Dan di sebaliknya, is there any macam perubahan dasar yang patut orang Melayu Islam bikin pada diri sendiri untuk to own property, like to have this, like if there's no like specific grant from the government or help from the government, what are specific basic actions or changes yang orang Melayu Islam should make to be more comfortable with wealth accumulation, for example, or owning property?
Maybe as a start is mindset. There are not that many, but we do see some, maybe as mentioned just now, out of life circumstances, then the people who are in difficult circumstances try to reduce their expenses as much as possible and say, well, I pay rent only $150 per month or $200 per month, good enough. If I buy a flat, then, I may have to spend $500-600 per month. Forgetting that while they are renting, property prices appreciate. And in another 3 or 4 years' time, a flat which would have cost 300,000 at one point in time would have cost 500,000 then, and it becomes even more unreachable. So the mindset to have is get a property as quickly as possible. Of course, you have to be reasonable, but get one as soon as possible. If it takes a bit of pain to do so, a bit of expense, do so. Bear in mind that there are grants. So make use of these grants then to reduce your expenses. But get one as soon as possible. Having a mindset that I would like to live in a rented flat for as long as possible because I don't have to spend so much money, that I think is quite dangerous. Unfair to the children actually. Because when they grow up and they need even more expenses, then you don't have cash you don't have asset to cash out. I hope that such families can appreciate the value of long-term planning, take a bit of bravery, to plunge, but with the correct advice and correct tips to buy within their means and within something that they can handle. But please don't have this idea to just live in a rented flat in order just to, to keep expenses low for as long as possible. As an interim measure, fine, but not as a long-term solution to your financial situation.
I think there's a lot of people in my generation who maybe bukan rental flat tapi macam yang banyak yang tahu, don't know why lah, my generation ramai yang tak kahwin, yang then they don't want to live, they want to live their own, they're not adulting macam you cakap. So they go and rent, but rent macam really rent 800, 1,000 just for themselves.
Yes,
yeah, because they want to be independent, but
Adults lah.
cannot afford to buy a flat or to take a loan or to whatever it is.
Yeah, and they rent and then they live with their own friends and so on, right? Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think that's an interesting trend now because I do have clients who go like, oh, I love my parents tapi I nak my own space. So macam mak I tak tahu I balik berapa. I want that freedom, But I think it will have a longer term implication because you tak ada mindset untuk pemilikan harta. Yeah, because you just live for the day, I just want to live in the moment, Tapi nanti bila ada keperluan, when you know that, what if you fall sick? Then you've got nothing to kata orang land yourself on. Tapi kalau you ada mindset, okay, I know I'm saving this up, my CPF, I'm building up my CPF money, so my savings to down pay my next property plus all the government grants, I'm just going to enter a property and let it appreciate. Because kita ada client single beli 2 room flexi, so it's a 99-year lease, entered at about 70,000 at that point. 5 years later the value appreciated about 450. 5 tahun saja. You bayangkan investment you 170 tu boleh naik sampai 450. Nak tak? Kalau you nak tak keuntungan tu, lepas tu you boleh enjoy lah. So macam Encik Ahmad Khalis kata, start as young as possible. For me, honestly, if I had known all this knowledge that I have now, I would have done much earlier. Tapi still not too late because again, look into your finances, work towards that. I've got clients, I work with 3 years dengan diorang. Planning finances, planning down payment, berapa nak declare income tax because they're self-employed. At the 3rd year mark, baru kita execute. So jangan kelang kabut, don't rush, don't feel pressured, but you need to have a clear goal and objective of what you want out of this property investment that you're embarking on.
Then, do you think maybe another mindset change that should happen in the community is to jangan takut tanya? Macam you were saying, kalau you tak ada tu expertise, you need advice, go to people who know and talk to them. Macam for example, kalau you ada planning untuk 3 tahun for that, ada cost tak? Like, you know what I mean? How do you charge? Because from what I know is the percentage when you buy and
I
sell
always
house.
see as me and in my job, I feel that I need to value add to people around me. He could choose another agent, but then believe in risky lah. I've been guiding this client. He finds my advice good. He has followed it for the past 3 years and he's stuck by me throughout his property investment journey. And I think as a person itself, you jangan fikir pasal duit lah. I mean, yes, we are commission based, I bukan buat kerja amal, I bukan counselor ke apa kan. These are noble people. But again, when you have that mindset of wanting to help people, macam peguam. Kerja diorang memang nak tolong orang sebenarnya. It helps in creating a better generation of people who are more aware of the opportunities out there.
Tapi untuk orang yang perlukan bantuan and all that, like don't be afraid to find experts and ask lah. Because I mean, maybe ada orang takut kalau aku tanya macam mana, like aku tak ada plan. But then, the fact that you are willing to help people for like 3 years, you're not taking any money until you sell the property. So maybe ada orang lah yang willing to tolong. Lagi kan kita masyarakat Islam, kita memang suka tolong menolong one another. Tapi kena cari yang betul-betul lah
Cari Puan Nona lah Okay, sebelum kita tutup tirai pada episod ini, mungkin ada sepatah dua kata yang mungkin Cik Nona dan juga Encik Khalis nak berikanlah kepada pendengar-pendengar kita.
I'd like to take on what was just mentioned. Please ask, please talk. I thought the younger people are better at networking than us, but perhaps one point that I can share is please don't be shy to ask the older folks. Not because the older folks are better, but because our perspective are a bit different. So we may know a different set of things, and then we learn from each other. So then we all can share. Your networking will improve, and so will ours. It's both benefiting from one another. Secondly, when you want to invest in anything, whether real estate or otherwise, have as much advice and consider as many things as possible, Take your time to look at all the pros and cons and make informed decisions. Sometimes, most of the time it will succeed, inshallah. Sometimes it fails for whatever reason. It's okay. Move on, Learn from the so-called failure and move. Nobody is on a success trail all the time. There will be ups and downs. So long as the trajectory is generally, moving upwards, then it should be.
Puan Nona pula?
I think, again, we are very blessed to be in Singapore. Perumahan ni merupakan di antara isu pertama pemerintah untuk memastikan seberapa banyak rakyat Singapura mempunyai rumah mereka sendiri. Jadi, take the opportunity to be part of this beautiful landscape. Do your proper planning. Malu bertanya sesat jalan. Jadi perlu jumpa orang-orang yang dapat membantu untuk mencapai impian hartanah anda. Dan saya rasa satu lagi ialah perlu berani. Kalau kita tak berani untuk mencuba ataupun takut, saya rasa kita tak boleh jadi satu masyarakat yang progresif. Jadi that is what I would do lah. To ask, to give it a go. If it doesn't work out, at least you've tried.
Okay, terima kasih semua sudi duduk dengan kita, dengar perbicaraan kita. This is the Kaya Raya Podcast. Please like, share, subscribe, comment down below, and we will see you in another episode. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum.
Bye.